There you are. So next I'll introduce Jon Balsbaugh, who introduced himself to all of you very nicely by an email earlier. Was that this week? I think so. So Jon?
President of Trinity School.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Though I've been to Trinity School at Meadowview a few times as a teacher, particularly when we were working on developing the school's approach to poetry, this is my first time being present with a lot of the parents. And I've enjoyed the conversations I've had with you already, both this evening and also in individual meetings. So if I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, I do hope I get a chance to say hi to at least a large number of you this evening. As I said in my short note of introduction, I will be visiting each of the Trinity School campuses twice a year, so I also look forward to getting to know you quite a bit better over the next few years. Before I get to my remarks this evening, I do want to thank Dr. Yo and the faculty and staff of Trinity School at Meadowview for hosting us this weekend. We very much appreciated your hospitality in the midst of such a busy week getting ready for Oktoberfest, so thank you. Finally, I want to mention that on Monday, I believe you've been notified about this, I will be holding an open forum for parents, or anyone who's interested for that matter. The event will be held at 7:30 here in the Commons. I will have some opening remarks about some of the things that will be coming out of my office in the next couple of years, but the time is chiefly an opportunity for you to provide feedback or ask questions about the areas that are the direct responsibility of my office. Those include overseeing the curriculum and the pedagogy of the schools, establishing the trajectory of our mission and vision, and attending to the intellectual, moral, and spiritual culture of the campuses. The topic of my talk this evening, however, is about the wider vision for education in the 21st century. I believe the title of my talk was released somewhat ominously as "Are We Still of Any Use?" That comes from one of the last complete writings of the German theologian and martyr Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a series of reflections he composed while in a German concentration camp entitled "After 10 Years, A Reckoning Made at New Year's, 1943. In it, Bonhoeffer observed to his good friend and colleagues of the Confessing Church regarding all that had happened in the prior decade in Germany, the great masquerade of evil has played havoc with our ethical concepts. For evil to appear disguised as light, charity, historical necessity, or social justice is quite bewildering to anyone brought up on our traditional ethical concepts. He then reflects on civil courage, the challenge of folly, the danger of developing a contempt for humanity, the nature of Christian confidence and optimism, as well as several other topics. And near the end of his piece, he reflects, "We have been silent witnesses of evil deeds. We have been drenched by many storms. We have learnt the arts of equivocation and pretense. Experience has made us suspicious of others and kept us from being truthful and open. Intolerable conflicts have worn us down and even made us cynical." And it was in this context that he asked of himself and his friends, "Are we still of any use?" Now, we're not dealing with anything quite like the socio-political issues that gave rise to Nazi totalitarianism in Germany or communist totalitarianism in Russia. We're not witnessing firsthand the deliberate destruction of culture, the carpet bombing of major cities, or systematic reigns of terror. We don't find ourselves, as Bonhoeffer and his friends did, on the brink of the collapse of civilization itself. And may God continue to preserve us from those things. However, we have witnessed in our time a relatively rapid collapse of cultural consensus on issues that are as foundational as marriage and family, social and political structures, and even a basic understanding of what it means to be a human person. And these changes, or at least the speed at which they have come, have frankly caught all but the most prophetic off guard. We do seem to be in a significant human upheaval in the West. So while we aren't experiencing their same conditions, we may very well find ourselves in a moral and spiritual crisis, not unlike that Bonhoeffer and his friends faced. The causes of these changes are complex, and their outcomes are uncertain. But everyone, sociologists, poets, philosophers, artists, theologians, even ordinary folks like us, trying to raise our kids as best we can, recognize that something is happening here, even if we don't know what it is. I'm certainly not here tonight to suggest that all the changes of the 21st century have been bad, or to point back to some magical time when it was easy to be Christians in the world and fulfill our mission. It may even be that Christians and people of goodwill who are eager to pursue truth, beauty, and goodness have always felt a little bit like they were in crisis, that the barbarians were at the door, so to speak, or even knocking at the gates of our own hearts. Nonetheless, if we are serious about educating at all, we have to educate in our time and for our time. So it is worth paying attention to the culture of our time. So I want to give 4 quick takes on this situation, sort of data points of cultural analysis, if you will. And these are just a few of the things that some of the more attentive people seem to have noticed about the time we're living in. The first concerns the general disposition towards those very things we care most deeply about: truth, beauty, and goodness. This comes from the novelist and essayist David Foster Wallace, one of our most insightful contemporary writers. He's probably best known for his commencement address at Kenyon College called "This is Water." But an essay called E Unibus Plurum, Television and U.S. Fiction, Wallace provides a sharp analysis of the rise in the American culture of the same kind of cynicism and irony that arose in Germany. Fed by the cultural revolutions of the 50s and 60s, Wallace saw this culture sustained by television and new media. And for him, the cynicism about the truth, especially in younger people, is characterized chiefly by a deep-seated fear of being thought naive or too idealistic. And this fear, according to Wallace, keeps people from something that the world deeply needs: straightforward sincerity. And I can tell you that those of us who have been in education for 10, 20, even 30 years have certainly experienced a rise in this challenge. The second observation concerns the way in which the moral and spiritual content of our traditions is received by our children. Dr. Christian Smith, a sociologist working at the University of Notre Dame, has done several major studies of children from a variety of religious backgrounds. And he's identified a trend in these children to adopt a religious worldview that may look on the surface quite like the religion of their parents, but when examined more carefully, has some striking foundational differences. He goes so far as to call this emerging attitude a new religion, a religion of moral, therapeutic deism. And his books are worth looking at, if nothing else, for the interviews with young people. But they also alert us that if we wish to pass on a living faith to our children, we need to attend carefully not only to what we are teaching, but to how the students freely and responsibly receive what we are teaching. The third observation is psychological. I'm sure many of you have been seeing the news stories and studies that are starting to come out on teen and young adult anxiety. Another appeared in the New York Times just 2 days ago. So what these studies are beginning to show is that we may be in the middle of an outright crisis of anxiety and depression among young people. And again, those of us who have been teaching for a long time are certainly aware of this shift in our students. The fourth and final observation I want to make about this cultural moment concerns the mechanisms we have created for relating to each other. These are things that, again, most of us are well aware of. The radical changes in relationships and social life that are being affected by new media platforms like Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter. It's almost hard to imagine, but Facebook has been widely available for only 12 years now. And now it significantly controls the flow of information that we receive about news in the United States. Twitter was created in 2006 and has lately come to dominate our social and political discourse. Snapchat is just turning 7 years old, but it's already the major form of communication for millions of teenagers. That means that our children, the ones who are passing through junior high and high school right now, are the first generation to be formed by this different understanding of what it means to be human together. And we have no idea really what sort of situation this change in culture will produce long term. So these and other things that are features of the 21st century that we have to be aware of. But there are also optimistic and hopeful voices that are no less honest. Cardinal Angelo Scola, speaking to a lay community with a distinctive educational mission, summarized our new situation and responsibility like this. What is sexual difference? What is love? What does it mean to procreate and to educate? Why should we work? Why may a pluralistic civil society be richer than a monolithic society? How can we meet one another to reciprocally build working community among all Christian communities and the good life in civil society? How can we renew finance and the economy? How can we face the fragilities of illness and death and moral fragility? How can we seek justice? How can we constantly learn and share the needs of the poor? All of this must be rewritten in our times, reconsidered, and therefore relived. Of course, the task Cardinal Scola describes here is a daunting one. If what he suggests is true, then even though we have the deep roots of Christian faith and all the resources of the past at our disposal, we're in a situation where we're going to have to ask ourselves afresh, as those who are concerned about education, what does it mean to prepare our children to be of use to God and the wise care and governance of this world? To prepare them to build his kingdom in this time. We have to ask, as Bonhoeffer and his friends in Germany asked, are we still of any use? But that question offers not only a daunting challenge, but also a tremendous opportunity, an opportunity for responsible action. Because I believe with every fiber of my being, as I know many of you do, that the answer to this question for all of us involved in the work of Trinity Schools is a resounding yes. Yes, we're still of use. Yes, there is future building work to be done here, in and with our children. In fact, I think this work we are partnering in, faculty, staff, parents, students, alumni, may be of greater importance now than ever before. Without exaggerating, I really do think that one of the things the world needs right now is Trinity School graduates. And I want to ground that confidence for you this evening by highlighting 3 distinctives of Trinity School that I think uniquely equip our graduates to meet the challenges of the 21st century, that equip them not only to survive in that world, but to provide leadership in it. Each of these distinctives is related to our aim of creating a culture that is marked by the rigorous exploration of reality. First of all, with respect to that aim itself, a Trinity education is not designed to introduce students to schooling in the sense that it's been understood for the past 150 years or so. That approach is growing old and stale. It seems that it's no longer suitable for the world in which we live, and so as a nation, we have found ourselves for the past several decades talking about a crisis in education, with superficial solution after superficial solution offered as a way to solve the problems. But a Trinity School education, on the other hand, is designed to bring our students into contact with reality. And reality never grows stale. It's permanent. It's substantial. It's always old and it's always new. And bringing students into contact with reality rather than schooling awaken something deep within themselves that is permanent, substantial, and always fresh. You can see this in the design of the curriculum your children experience when they go out and observe the natural world directly. Before they begin naming, labeling, or categorizing anything, they first encounter an insect. You can also see this in our approach to literature. Students are asked to fully inhabit the world of a story and exercise their moral imagination. We actually ask them to treat the characters that they encounter almost like real people. Now, it's far more delightful in and of itself than treating the literature as an academic exercise, but it also has the significant effect of teaching them how to better understand and deal with the reality of other people and of themselves. As a side note, one of the things college professors often remark about our graduates is that they are so intellectually vibrant. They ask questions rather than memorize answers. They want answers more than they want points. And they understand themselves fundamentally as learners, not as consumers of an educational product. That's because they have, in our terms, encountered reality in all its magnificence, and they want to know more. So if we did nothing more than enable our students to encounter the marvel of real things, real bits of creation, real works of art, other real human beings, even the reality of God in Christ, we would have done them a tremendous service and readied them to continue to engage the world around them. The second point I want to emphasize is that at Trinity Schools, we see this reality as one thing. Reality is not chopped up into special disciplines such that we would study God in theology, a strictly materialistic world in science, fancy big ideas in philosophy, and the human experience in literature. Rather, students at Trinity learn about all these things together in the company of well-educated and well-rounded adults who teach across the curriculum and who think across the curriculum. We treat reality as one thing that we are interested in looking at from multiple angles at the same time. And this sense for a connection between different things is a very important element in what I think gives our alumni the ability to provide genuine leadership in many of those critical interdisciplinary concerns of our times. Talking about things like bioethics or public policy, or even the wider conversation of educational reform. The final distinctive of a Trinity School education that I want to highlight tonight is dialogue. I'm sure that many of us here tonight would agree that if there is one thing seriously missing in our culture at this moment, it's genuine dialogue. We need to be able to talk to each other. And that does not start with a 140-character tweet. It starts with the long labor of listening, of attending to another human person. Nor does dialogue proceed best in Facebook likes or Snapchat stories. It proceeds face-to-face, through encounters that are full of mutual respect, whether or not the parties reach full agreement. Are our children also on Facebook and Snapchat? Do our alumni also tweet? Certainly. After all, they are a part of this generation. They too are a product of their time. And a part of their leadership in the future will probably be finding a way for themselves to responsibly navigate the new media, figuring out for themselves how to overcome the severe limitations we tend to see in those platforms, and maybe even turn them to their best use. But the sheer amount of time that Trinity School students spend in direct, personal, face-to-face dialogue can't help but be formative for them. Our children at least have the chance for these hours during the day to ground themselves in a more fundamentally human form of relationship with each other, with their teachers, and with the reality they're exploring. Real people sitting down together to talk about all the facets of reality. It seems like a simple thing, and it is. But in that simple formulation of a Trinity School education lies a part of our hope for the future. In the ordinary lives of our graduates, as well as through the leadership they are poised to provide in this world. I want to end here on one important note. Yes, this world into which we now send our graduates, our children, can be disorienting. Things are confusing now. We're not sure how things are going to turn out. But we are a resurrection people. We are a new creation people. And the work of providing wise care and governance for creation and extending God's wise rule has always been a work of renewal. It's a pleasure to be a part of this educational renewal effort with you. Thank you for partnering with us. Thank you very much.